Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the Virtual CISO Moment. Wes Spencer joins us today. He is CEO of Empath Cyber. Wes, thank you so much for joining us today.
Greg, thanks for having me on.
Wes, I know we go way back. I think we first crossed paths when we were both involved with FS-ISAC in the banking world, and that was more years ago than either of us will admit to right now. So I won't go into that, but I will ask you this. How and why did you get started into cyber, and talk a little bit about your path? Because I know you do an awful lot. You are involved, have your hands in many different projects. So would love to hear about your path.
Greg, I think it's been ingrained in my DNA from the very beginning. When I was a little kid, I won't go back too far, but when I was a little kid in Florida, we had these watchtowers that you could use to look for fires. And when I was a kid, I was like, "Mom, I want to be a watchtower guy that climbs and looks for fires." And I didn't understand back in those days that you only climbed them in time of need. I just thought there's always someone up in every watchtower. And in a weird way, that's what security is, isn't it? It's like this ability to sort of watch over for others, to help others, to protect others. There's an altruism to it. And while even through high school, I was kind of a curious punk and, broke into things I probably shouldn't have, like most kids in the 90s when security is like an afterthought. It really taught me that I love this idea of both being curious and inquisitive by nature, but also the ability to truly help people. Like I can actually make the world a better place in what I do. And so that's really where it all began for me, Greg.
And so what was your first position, and talk a little bit about your structure as you went through.
Man, so you got to understand, I got started in all this in the 90s, right? And so
Hmm.
for me, as a high schooler, so I got really big into dial-up modems and all this kind of stuff, and ended up landing a job in marketing, for a web hosting company. Believe it or not, I don't even remember the name of it. It's long defunct, but my job was doing lead gen kind of stuff, like scraping email addresses and then using that and then firing off automated emails in the early, or we're talking 96, 97, something like that. So I was doing that, and I was probably making the equivalent of maybe $20 an hour. But as a punk kid in the 90s, I had no idea what that was worth. And I hated sitting down at a computer, just doing this rote work over and over and over. So that was actually my very first job. And then my second job in the same year, I got into reviewing computer games. So again, this doesn't sound like anything, but back in the 90s, my other real job was doing computer game reviews, music reviews, all this kind of stuff as the internet was just coming out. I mean, this is pre-Facebook, right? Pre-MySpace. And
Right.
so, communities were trying to be discovered. What does that look like? And so I got involved in this in the early days, and I just never really looked back. It's amazing to see kind of what's happened over the years.
So you were in banking for a bit, because I think that's when we first you in fact, I think you took over the FS-ISAC's Community Institution Council at one point in time, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. It's funny how this all happens, right? So before I went into banking, I was in education, and I was a college professor at Murray State University in Kentucky. And what I did when I got into banking and you and I got very involved in FS-ISAC, I found myself just continuing that legacy of I just want to help. I want to teach. I want to educate. What I know, I want to share out with no strings attached. And wouldn't you know it, over time, I guess I helped enough to where folks said, "Hey, we'd love for Wes to be the chair for the Community Institution Council." And so I really thoroughly enjoyed that. And honestly, Greg, that was one of the key moments for me that propelled my career in a way I never would have imagined. It really kind of propelled me into being one of the co-founders at Perch Security, and really kind of the future of my career. And it's amazing because it was just something I was like, yeah, I'll do just to help. I got $0 out of it. It was just purely there to help others in their journey and mine. And, that really is the lesson learned in life, right? When we just give away and we help others with no expectations to return and follow that golden rule, it's amazing how things really just kind of click and fall into place. So yeah, that's when you and I first met. And that was one of the big center points of my personal career, was having that opportunity just to help thousands of other banks in their security journey.
I think actually you were right after Anthony Scarola and I on that, and I will echo what you said, because Anthony and I we were the co-founders of the Community Institution Council, and yes, that was a leaping point for my career as well too. I was actually new in banking at that point in
Oh,
time.
wow.
I had my entire career prior to that was higher ed and local government and all that. So it was a new step. And instead of being, I think this is a good lesson, instead of being overwhelmed and trying to shy away from something new, I just dove right into it. And to your point, yes, I always like to say, if you have a heart of a servant, you're going to be successful, because ultimately that's what it's all about. So all right. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about your path, and also about what you think is some of the more significant threats to small and mid-sized businesses, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. vCISO Catalyst is the ultimate community for cybersecurity specialists who believe in collaborating to strengthen the security of small to mid-sized businesses. Join the vCISO Catalyst today and be part of a community that shares your passion for cybersecurity, knowledge, and professional growth. Together, we can create a safer world for everyone. Visit our website at www.vcisocatalyst.org and start your journey with vCISO Catalyst today. All right. So the only reason why I roll the ad at that point in time is give people to think about what they're going to answer. So what do you think is one of the more pressing threats to small and mid-sized business cybersecurity today?
Well, great question. I've spent the past 5 years specifically devoted to the SMB space. So this is an area that I have a lot of expertise in. And, before I answer the question, I will say I've dealt with a lot of breaches, and I've helped a lot of organizations walk through these. And, especially at the SMB side, they're left in the ashes of a pretty significant breach that you think, how did this happen to me? Why did this happen? I couldn't fathom that this thing could cost me $1 million or more when you count interruption costs, you count digital forensics, you count lawsuits and legal, you count, all of the challenges and potential regulatory fines, not including potentially paying a ransom, right? Like, it's just much more expensive than small business have ever considered. And so to answer your question, I think what's happened is threats have come down market, in the sense of, like, bad guys have realized that small and mid-size are not only not protected like other larger businesses, they're also fairly lucrative. And so if I'm a bad guy, I kind of operate like water. I want to go after the path of least resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to SMBs, you're being forced more and more and more to go down a journey of security that you weren't prepared for, may not have budgeted for, and certainly don't have the expertise to handle, right? Because very few small business have a dedicated security person. And even if you have a dedicated security person, well, they have to have a family. They have to eat, live, sleep, right? They've got a life too. So you can't be 24/7 watching over your organization. And so what does that mean? That means for SMBs, you got to think differently. You got to start thinking through, well, what does that look like for me in terms of an outsourced relationship, and investing in some things that I think can go a really long way to protect my organization at a cost I can afford. So things like 24/7 managed EDR, like endpoint detection and response, is a critical component. You've got to have somebody watching over that. Just like I have 24/7 alarm system on my home, because I know bad guys come in at 3 a.m., not always like, 10 a.m. And then also, I think a big thing to consider too is, what does cyber insurance look like? These days it's gotten expensive, but it's still affordable when you stack up the cost of a breach. So I think that's important. I think going through an education journey of making sure all folks understand, why security matters, and, the basics of, like, what a phishing attack is, are really helpful. And so, I really encourage SMBs to look for a qualified managed IT provider that can provide those security services, because the reality is 95% of SMBs that are out there don't have the ability to do security on their own. And that's okay. You don't do your finances on your own. You have a bookkeeper and a CPA. So do the same thing if you're SMB, and find a qualified MSP and managed service provider that can help you go down that journey of security.
So what do you say to like an SMB that says, well, I mean, I appreciate all that, but it's like, I'm not really a target. Why would anybody come after me? What's your response to that?
Yep. I hear that a lot. I'm not a target. No one cares about my data. I'm too small to matter. I actually flip that table and I say, no, because you're small, you matter. Because you don't have the defenses, you matter. If I'm a bad guy, am I going to go after, like, Bank of America in downtown New York with, like, armed guards everywhere? Or am I going to go after small Main Street bank in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky? I'm probably going to go there. Even though the payout isn't nearly as enormous, the logistics and risk and simplicity are way, way, way more in my favor. And so SMBs need to realize they are under threat. They are under attack. I have personally witnessed many organizations go through these attacks, and it's simply too important to ignore. The things that keep a business owner up at night, because I'm a business owner, are what are the things that could shut me down. And it's scary to think cyber attacks, while they don't often shut a business down, they certainly roll you back a year or two. Look, I'll just give you a 30-second example of this. I was talking to an insurance agent, like a broker, right? Just your classic like State Farm style insurance agent. And they had a very large scale breach. And he told me the whole story of basically had a great weekend. Friday, Saturday was great. Sunday, they couldn't get online. Nothing was online. Like they're like, that's strange. So he comes into the office to kind of figure out what's happening. And all of a sudden, ransomware everywhere. And he said in the aftermath of the attack, not only did he realize that was the ransomware, it cost them all in, the ransomware payment was $250K, but they were out for about 2 full weeks. So he said, when you count all the damages, we lost about $1 million, he said. And he goes, the thing for me is I learned that the bad guys were in my network 30 days before they triggered the ransomware. And he goes, the thing I will never forgive myself for is I had 30 days to do something and I didn't, because I had no idea. And so I think that's what SMBs need to hear is it is real. It does happen. And fortunately, you can invest in defenses that really go a long way to giving you that visibility that can be the difference maker between something like that happening and something like that not happening.
Yeah, I think that sometimes small businesses, they think, again, because they're so small, it's like, well, I mean, a criminal can't extort too much of a payout from me. But really, the way from what you hear, what you see in the statistics is that it's not about increasing margin, it's about increasing volume. So if the bad guys have like a low margin but a high volume, then that's the way they're going to go. And that makes it even more imperative, to your point, that SMBs are more of a target at this point in time. They've changed their business model, so we have to change ours.
Correct.
So what are you doing? What is Empath Cyber?
Yeah. So for me, Empath Cyber is a passion project of mine. When we started Perch Security 4 years ago, one of the things I learned was helping these IT providers in their security journey is colossally hard because there's an education component that goes with it, right? In the sense of like, I have to be able to teach MSPs and teach SMBs why security matters, what we've just been talking about today. The challenge is most of those people that are in those industries, like that's hard for them. Like what we're talking about, they don't understand security. And even the managed IT providers, they're trying to learn security. So often they're like, I started fixing printers and fixing computers, and now I've gotten into this managed security thing. Like that's it's not my wheelhouse. I feel really like imposter syndrome is a real thing here. And so one of the things I learned was, well, that's my world. I've been an educator, as we started out on this podcast, all my life. And so Empath Cyber is about that. It's about giving people a platform, and it's focused on not like the security leaders, not the people like you, Greg, but like the people that are like, I just need to know the basics about security. I need to understand why it matters. I need to know how to talk to clients about it. I need to understand how to what good security looks like. And I need to know on the events that's happening in the world around me, what matters, like what should I be focusing on? So Empath Cyber at a high level is a community for people that are growing in security together with assuming no security knowledge. And the idea is if we can raise that bar and raise that education, that has profound effects in the SMB world around us, which is like what, 95% of the US economy. And so that's really what Empath is all about, is helping people grow in their security journey.
So a small business can subscribe to the community, or how does that work?
Well, they sure can. But the big focus for me is really those IT providers, which are SMBs themselves, right? Most of them are 10 to 15, maybe 20 employees. That's the real focus for them, because what I've discovered is for the small business owner themselves, they've got a lot of fires that are burning. And so they need to understand security enough to say, I got to invest in it. I got to make sure I'm doing the right things. I got to need to know what's happening around me a little bit. But really, my IT provider is the one that's focused on delivering security for me. And so that's really my target, is those IT providers, large and small. I have some that are, thousands of employees all the way down to single employee owned IT shops. So that's really the target for me, is really focusing on those folks.
So my mind is going here, and I'm guessing then that the idea is that since most small and mid-sized businesses will they equate information security with IT security with IT. So they're going to rely more so on their IT provider to help them with security. And so you're raising the bar for the folks in IT security, and then downstream, hopefully that'll help the SMBs.
100% correct. Yep.
All
This
right.
is the way that we solve this problem. Yep.
I love it. I love it. Website for Empath,
Yeah.
if people want to learn more.
Would love to. Empathcyber.com is it. And then LinkedIn, just look me up, Wes Spencer on LinkedIn. I'll come right up.
All right, I'm going to have to look that up. I know you got a lot of other things going on. I'm looking at your LinkedIn here. Any other of your projects that you're working on right now that you want to talk about?
Yeah, the other one is, well, I'm actually wearing the shirt. If anyone's looking, it's CyberFox. I'm also the vice president of security strategy at CyberFox, and again, same thing. We're really focused on these IT providers, but we do work with a lot of like larger enterprise as well. Handling identity management. So if you don't know what that is, how do we go beyond passwords? How do we secure the identity of our users, which is sort of the new edge for security, right? Gone are the firewalls and the castles and moats. Really, the identity is becoming the key component, right? And so CyberFox is awesome. We're about a year old now. We just hit our 1 year birthday. And Greg, I love startups. Like, it's my bread and butter. I love helping them grow, and I love seeing the trajectory and the potential behind them. And so CyberFox is a lot of fun. And like I said, we're a year into this journey, and future is bright for us, and really, really pumped to be with the CyberFox crew as well.
Well, and I love that story. I'll have to check that out. I also love the fact that the shirt that you're wearing matches perfectly with the logo up in the corner up there.
I
guess
noticed
in
that.
direction.
Yeah.
So we coordinated that, I guess,
Yes.
right? Well, there's a lot of stress involved, I know, with doing all of this. I know that as you're a small business owner, leader, founder, and been in cyber for quite some time. And I am as well, and have learned that if I don't get away and kind of put aside what I'm doing, I can get sucked in too much and face burnout. And I think burnout is a serious problem in our field, our industry, and it's only amplified by being an entrepreneur. What's one of the ways that you mitigate that risk?
Yeah, what a great question, because we've got to do it. There's too much people that are sucked into this 24/7 until they get burnout. Some people, there's too much alcohol in our industry, in the sense of like, that's the only way to turn their brain off. And that's sad. It's something no one ever talks about, is, what a struggle that is. And so how do you pull away from those things? Well, for me, I love biking. I've got a road bike. I'm always on it. I rode 15 miles just yesterday morning. I find beautiful trails. I like to get up early in the morning and just kind of like, it's so awesome, right? And really a good disconnect. Also, family, right? Like, we're all, not all, but many of us are blessed with family. Go spend time with your family, right? I live in Tampa, so we love to go to the beach a lot. We'll just hang out, go there. So, really spending time with family a lot. And that really, like, that's about it for me. It's a lot of family time, and it's a lot of like getting on my bike. And those two things are really recharging for me, and really, really healthy. And so, yeah, completely agree. You got to find those anti-burnout mechanisms, and it's got to be away from the computer. It just has to be.
You touched on something which is a kind of a soapbox, becoming more of a soapbox issue for me, and that is the prevalence of alcohol in the industry. And I'm not trying to be a prude or anything like that, but it does seem like that your typical conference, for example, it's like you have the first day, and then after the first day, you have the booth crawl, and the main focus of that is folks having alcohol there, and then you have the vendor dinners where there's a big focus on alcohol there and all that. I have always wanted to see, instead of like having those sorts of events, and I think that we're starting to see a little bit more of these, if we had like some sort of an activity event. Like, what's something we can do together? Even just something healthy, like, as you said, going out and taking a walk or something like that. I don't really have a question associated with that. It's just that I'm glad that you brought that up, because health sucker maybe is not the right way to say it, but it all it does is just really suck your health out in some ways. And I'm not to say that I don't enjoy a drink every now and then. I do, certainly, but you're right. I think that that's something we need to get away from as an industry. You got a lot of irons in the fire, as I mentioned before. So what kind of future plans do you want to talk about? Or
future.
you got to keep them all secret, right?
No, no, yeah, not at all. I really, one of the big things I'm thinking about is, where is Empath Cyber going as a whole, and where do I want to continue to take that? So that's been a big focus for me as I'm expanding content and really working with other content creators to get things into the platform that can really be a benefit and help to others. And I'm big on that. And just like you, I'm also a creator. So I do a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of things on YouTube and really just enjoy, kind of helping others in that journey. It's been a real joy and treasure for me. So, that's where my brain is always going. Actually, Greg, even have my own book coming out next month for these managed IT providers. So excited about that coming out. We've got a release coming out in a few weeks at a conference. And so yeah, my future is just, continuing to be that, what can I do to help others and help them in their journey and growth? And if we stay focused on that, it's, as we said before, it's amazing how things just come back to you. And so I really want that to be a big story of my life, of just continuing to be there to serve others and help them in their journey, because it returns back to you always.
Awesome story, and awesome way to end it, Wes. It's been wonderful catching up. I appreciate it. I appreciate all you do for the industry. I know that you do spend an awful lot of time helping folks and getting, it's about giving and not thinking about what you're getting back, but you do end up getting back more than you ever thought that you would if you hadn't given. So I appreciate your time, man.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, everybody, stay secure.